Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I wanted to talk today about interview offers and responses, and there is a spreadsheet out there. I know that some of you don't like it, some of you do like it. You just want to know. But I wanted to let you know what's going on with that spreadsheet. I'm on lockdown, so I'm at home. We're not allowed back on campus until the 13th, but everything I'm doing remotely. So it's an interesting time. I'll just leave it at that. There might be birds in the background from outside because that is right next to the room I'm in, and then I might hear a dog or children because we are all together. Anyway, let's go into kind of a couple of spreadsheets and sites that you can go to. So many of you are familiar with Facebook and Twitter, and Instagram is kind of the most popular, but something called Reddit, you may never have heard of it before, but it's a number of threads that come off of a single post. And there is a Reddit for pharmacy residency, r/pharmacy residency. I just watch it. I don't post in it. But there are a couple of posts that are relatively recent that are pretty important to residency. And while there aren't a ton of people that participate, there are enough that are sharing enough good information that are really helpful. So the first thing was forecast did crash. So if you were getting that 404 error, that wasn't uncommon. There were so many applications, the system couldn't handle it. So make sure that with the RPD that they did get your application, because I'm hearing that there is no confirmation email for certain things, and there's some, if you made payment, you may never have gotten that kind of thing, and maybe that's something to fix for next year so that people know for sure, hey, did you get my application? Is my application confirmed? But there was definitely concern about that. So once your application was in there, there was question phase 2 interview timeline, and there's a couple of RPDs that are actually putting in that they've reviewed about 3/4 of the applications they've received, and they were going to send out interview requests tomorrow. So this is probably one of the last days, and it's Thursday, the 19th, March 19th, when they're going to be sending out those interview requests. And so, I'm sure you're already checking your email a million times a day, but people are hearing back, usually the 18th and the 19th, some even, I heard the 17th, but expect that those replies should be coming here this week. And then in terms of when you will get it, there is a spreadsheet, and it's under the title Replies from Programs Timeline. And on that spreadsheet, we see that the offers were coming in yesterday, and so far 3 platforms, either on traditional phone, on Skype, and then also some people are hearing with Microsoft Teams. So these are 3 platforms you may or may not be familiar with. If you've been in part of a group like PDC or Kappa Psi, and had to have remote conversations, then your computer is set up for it. But again, most of you are probably home, or you're going to be at work, and you need to make sure, especially if you're doing rotations at the VA or something like that, where you can't just pull up a laptop and get online. So right now, as soon as you get that interview okay, you need to find a spot that you're going to take the interview at that time, and you need to practice there. Because I've heard many times where even when I'm trying to interview someone, there's, okay, well, I can't hear you, or things like that. So with Skype especially, I found that there's not one time that I've not turned off my Mac, turned it back on, and Skype has worked. So the quickest way to fix something with Skype is generally to power off, power up. So if you have a certain number of tabs, if you have a Word document, something like that, make sure you have it set up so that you can open it right away as soon as you repower up, if that's something that happens. If you're relying on a computer and a setup that's not yours, that's something you're going to want to set up and have a test call with someone about maybe a half hour before your time, so that you can make sure to get it. Again, I recommended getting a microphone. Obviously, Amazon, I think, is not sending out things that are not crucial right now. So you want to make sure that you can get a microphone from someone that has it. I use a Snowball mic. It's like $20, $30. It's not very expensive. And it's plug and play. But you want to make sure you've tested all of these things, because it seems silly, just like, why does somebody pretty get less jail time than someone else if you've watched that 100 Humans show? But if someone has better audio, it's more likely that you're going to get a residency interview than if you have worse audio. And that may seem silly or crazy or unfair, but it's just a matter of, they can write better notes on you. They can have a better conversation with you. There's less frustration with you. So all the things that you wouldn't think of are very relevant. So in terms of the dates, we're seeing the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, and the 22nd. So I think weekends are still fair game. I don't think everything is going to happen during regular hours, but I also have seen that they go from the 20th then to the 23rd, so skipping the weekend. Again, very little data in terms of that. Maybe you've heard from your schools and they've told you from last year what happened, but obviously this is unprecedented, so expect that everything is going to be by Skype. But from a social distancing perspective, it makes a lot more sense for one person to do the interview, or for them, maybe one or two people, to do it from different rooms, and to not all get huddled into a single room and interview people time after time, talking into the microphone, one person's germs on it, another person's germs on it. It just doesn't make sense for that to happen that way. But let's go back to kind of what's going on with the actual interview. So you can still go to residencyhelp.com, go to free codes, and I think there's still a couple of copies of the phone interview book that you can get that can help you quite a bit. It's called Surviving the Phone Interview. I didn't really think of anything clever, but there are many, many different things about the phone interview than face-to-face. The biggest one and the most difficult is not being able to judge what the people are saying, and not being able to judge how they're reacting, their body language, their face, all of those things. Because you think, okay, well, did you like what I said? Did you not like what I said? Are we getting along? Are we not getting along? So it's important to keep a mirror by where you're interviewing, off to the side. And this may seem silly, but you cannot help as a human but smile when you see a mirror. And they will hear it in your voice. It's just like, oh, I can hear you smiling on the phone. And the same thing is absolutely true. So while maybe you can't hear their responses, you want to make the assumption that they are engaged and they are in good stead. So high energy and continuously smiling through the interview and being very excited about it rather than nervous. So it's a misconception that you can reduce your nervous energy. What you can do, though, is transfer that into, I hate to say happy energy, but indeed, there's something you can do about that. And then in terms of what the actual, what you're going to hear, how quickly you're going to hear, it's really just a matter of a back and forth before and after. So first you go in, you get the interview, you have the interview. A couple days later, you might email back just to ask any other questions that you have. And again, so important, they don't know if you are going to rank them. You're not allowed to say, hey, you're my number one, or you're my only one. What you can do, though, is reaffirm your desire to go there after a couple of days, after they have done their last interview. So the most important question you can ask at the end is, when do you feel you'll be done with interviews? How many people are you interviewing, if you're courageous enough to ask something like that, so that you know for your own sake how to rank them just as they're ranking you. Your goal is not to have 25 people to rank. Your goal is to have up to 3, and this would be a lot. 3 sites to rank that you really feel you match well with. If you can rank 3 sites, you are in pretty decent shape in terms of a true connection. So maybe you emailed 40 sites, you heard back from 20, got interviewed by 5, and now of those 5, maybe you have 2 or 3 that you connect with well. And that's really what you're hoping for, is to connect well with a couple of sites and to put them as number one and then hope for the best. So again, the numbers that get interviewed are much more people get knocked out through the interview process than did in phase one. So in the first one, it was 1 out of 5 that get knocked out based on not getting an interview. It's the opposite in phase two, where 4 out of 5 get knocked out, so that 1 out of 5 are left. And if you got an interview, you are 1 out of 5. And now, the odds are relatively in your favor that you have some of a 20% chance. So let's talk about the last thing, which is licensing itself. And I know that there is a lot of concern because the Pearson Centers are closed until early April. And let's go to what's going on in Italy. They've graduated thousands of physicians early. And the crisis there is obviously overwhelming. You've read it in the paper, or you've read it, online and so forth. So I think that the need to get health professionals out there in some way will make it possible for people to get their licenses, to pass the boards and things like that. That's kind of one of those things where, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has a trouble of its own. Right now, focus on doing the very best that you can to get the interview, very best that you can during the interview, and very best that you can in making sure to affirm you are interested in them so that they know, yeah, we're not going to get rejected. We do not want to go into the scramble. And that is something that's weighing heavily on the RPD's mind. So make sure that you make clear, I really want to be there. I think we have a great connection, and I really think that I could serve your patients at a very high level. All right, well, that's it for now. But again, TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com. If you have questions, get back to people mostly in usually a day or two. Obviously, things are a little bit different now that I'm home and working remotely. But again, I very much want you to succeed. And if there's something that I can do, please let me know. Hey, thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. I do encourage you to go to residencyhelp.com, get on the mailing list. I'll send you out an email every Friday during residency season, but then afterwards, I'll still have a number of episodes on helping you get through residency itself. And then if you're somebody that's looking at residency in the future, I'll also have content for that as well. If you have a question, I'm pretty good about getting back to you. And if I don't have an answer, I will know someone that does. So thanks again for listening to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please do rate and review. It really matters in terms of our ability to reach more people. Thanks again.